The night the sky changed. The Phoenix Lights of 1997. On the evening of March 13th, 1997, something moved over the American Southwest that refused to fit neatly into any explanation. It didn't roar like a jet. It didn't blink like conventional aircraft. And for thousands who looked up that night, it didn't behave like anything they had ever seen before. This is the story of the Phoenix Lights, but more importantly, it's the story of what happened after the lights faded. The first glimpse. It began quietly. At approximately 6:55 p.m., a man in Henderson, Nevada, looked up and saw something that didn't belong. 6 lights arranged in a V shape glided across the sky, too steady to be planes, too deliberate to be random. Then came more sightings. A police officer, someone trained to observe, to assess, to testify, reported reddish lights moving silently overhead. In Prescott Valley, a family watched as what they thought were separate lights slowly revealed themselves to be something far more disturbing. A single, massive object. Not lights. A craft. It didn't streak across the sky. It moved with intention. Slowly, silently, purposefully. And then it came closer. The moment everything changed. By the time it reached the outskirts of Phoenix, the truth was impossible to ignore. This wasn't a distant anomaly. It was overhead. Witnesses described a colossal, triangular, or boomerang-shaped object, hundreds of feet across. Some said it blocked out the stars as it passed. Others said they could see a solid underside, faintly illuminated by the very lights that outlined its shape. It wasn't just civilians. Pilots in the air reported seeing it. Even actor and pilot Kurt Russell would later recount spotting unusual lights while flying that night. And below, entire neighborhoods stood frozen, staring upward in collective disbelief. No engine noise, no sonic boom. Just silence, and something impossibly large moving through it. The wave of witnesses. By conservative estimates, tens of thousands of people saw something that night. Polling later suggested that nearly 10% of Arizona's population witnessed the phenomenon. Think about that. Not a handful of conspiracy theorists, not a blurry photograph. Thousands of independent observers, families, police officers, pilots, describing the same impossible thing. And yet, within hours, something else began to form. A second story. The second narrative. Around 10 p.m., hours after the massive craft had passed, a new set of lights appeared over Phoenix, stationary, glowing, and eventually fading. These were captured on video, grainy, distant, but real. And almost immediately, the explanation arrived. Military flares, dropped during a training exercise. Case closed. Except it wasn't. Because the flares came after the earlier sightings. Because they didn't move the same way. Because they didn't block out the stars. And because they didn't explain the massive, silent object that had already crossed the state. But the damage was done. The narrative had split. The press conference that made it worse. In the days that followed, public concern grew. People wanted answers. Instead, they got a joke. Arizona Governor Fife Symington held a press conference. Cameras rolled, tension hung in the room, and then out walked a man in a cheap alien costume. Laughter, dismissal, case closed, again, at least publicly. But years later, Symington would reverse course. He admitted he had seen the object himself, that it was enormous, that it was unlike anything he recognized. By then, the moment had passed. The ridicule had done its job. The one tape that might have changed everything. While the public debate raged, one woman refused to let it go. Frances Barwood was the only elected official in Phoenix who openly called for an investigation. She believed the witnesses deserved answers. And then her phone rang. A man named Richard Curtis claimed he had something extraordinary. Clear video footage of the object. Not distant lights, but the craft itself, its shape, its scale, its movement against the skyline. This wasn't just another blurry recording. This was evidence. Curtis said you could see how massive it was compared to buildings, that the lights illuminated the underside, that it wasn't just lights, it was solid. Barwood told him to send the tapes. He agreed, but they never arrived. The visit. Days later, Curtis called again, but something had changed. Two men had come to his home. They wore black suits, black hats, black shoes. They carried themselves with quiet authority. Not aggressive, but not optional either. They said they were from Barwood's office. They weren't. They asked about the tapes. Curtis told them where they were, and then, just like that, he handed them over. No receipt, no paperwork, no questions. They left in a black sedan, and the tapes were gone. The disappearance. When Barwood heard the story, she was stunned. She had sent no one. Something was wrong. Then things got worse. Curtis agreed to speak publicly. He gave an interview describing the encounter. The tapes, maybe that's when it began. And then he vanished. No hospital records, no trace, no closure. As far as anyone can confirm, Richard Curtis was never seen again. The tapping. Barwood, now deeply unsettled, had her phone lines checked. The technician didn't stay long. He went outside, came back to the door, and refused to re-enter. He confirmed what she feared. Her phone had been tapped. Not amateur work. Government level. Now the questions weren't just about lights in the sky. They were about control. What really happened? That depends on which version you accept. One version says it was military flares and misidentified aircraft. A perfect storm of confusion, timing, and imagination. The other says something enormous, structured, controlled, and unknown, traveled across Arizona in full view of thousands. And that efforts were made to contain the story, to redirect it, to neutralize it, and maybe to erase parts of it entirely. The lingering shadow. The Phoenix Lights remain one of the most witnessed and most debated UFO incidents in history. Not because of a single video, not because of one witness, but because of the sheer number of people who saw the same impossible thing, and because of what followed afterward. The ridicule, the reversal, the missing evidence, the vanished man, and the quiet suggestion that maybe, just maybe, the real story didn't end when the lights went out.